Hello and welcome to today's session on brokers and cybersecurity, how you can drive increased volume in your business. My name is Jeff Dolly. I'm the president of Cybersecurity Compliance Corp, and I'm here to help you understand how cybersecurity fits with your business model as a broker and how that can actually be a client-winning strategy for your brokerage. First of all, we've all seen over the last couple of years with the insanity of pandemics and lockdowns and the relative difficulty of doing business, workforces went home without enough preparation and frankly found themselves in a position where they were absolutely ripe for attack. Over the last 2 years, we've seen an increase in not only successful cyber attacks, but in resulting claims, and that's put a strain on the industry. Some insurers have even taken steps as far as saying no, certain softwares are not acceptable. In order to maintain your coverage, you must avoid those software providers and withdrawing capacity from the marketplace. So very challenging times on the insurance side around cybersecurity, no question. We're all aware of how prominent in the media cyber attacks are and the types of issues that creates for a small business in particular, who just doesn't have the resources to deal with these things. The other challenge that we've got is that there's so much talk around cybersecurity as a technology issue, when frankly it's a risk issue, and humans are a contributing factor in almost all cybersecurity breaches. Talking to clients, the most critical thing about addressing a client around cybersecurity is not just to focus on the liability coverage or in how it's integrated into policies and the technology side, but to really address this as a risk management topic. You think about whether it's auto or home or life and health. When you talk about wellness as opposed to protection, it is really about wellness for the organization around cybersecurity, and that cyber hygiene component, cyber resilience component. And so it is about much more about being a risk management partner as a broker rather than simply somebody who provides coverage as a supply. So helping clients to understand, I'm going to actually walk through some of the basics of cybersecurity and how messaging can help when dealing with a client, helping them understand that it's not just about buying that firewall, it's about putting in the right policies and procedures, and then surrounding that with a stop loss, which is really what cyber coverage is, that covers catastrophic events, but that only works when you've done the work you can around risk mitigation. So the hacker, that dark figure in the corner in their basement, in their garage, who's attacking everybody, unfortunately, that actually isn't the main culprit or risk that clients face. And they need to understand that it's the individuals in the firm and the behavior that they engage in. And, is a picture of an individual who was caught on camera with their password on a sticky note for all the world to see on a telecast. Spear phishing emails and phishing emails, they become more and more sophisticated with the use of machine learning and AI, to the point where they're actually, in some cases, eavesdropping emails for a period of time in order to then emulate email writers and then proliferating through an organization to try to get adverse behavior out of that organization, like paying fake invoices. IoT and the advent of these smart devices, it is a risk that most people don't understand. When you have this super secure network and you've hired somebody to lock it down, and then you add a device that's internet connected, that's behind your firewall so that you can manage it online, that's problematic. That opens you up to attack. And so that's an education element that needs to be shared with clients. And I put this picture up. This is a plant that recycles electric arc furnace dust and recovers the zinc from it, sell it back to electric arc furnaces for galvanizing steel. There was an attack on this plant, a criminal attack around insurance fraud and theft, but it was facilitated by a cyber attack where an internal party was working with a third-party malicious group to circumvent the controls being put in place at the plant. They were eavesdropping on emails and were able to stay ahead of management for quite some period of time before they were discovered. And so cyber attacks aren't always standalone. Often they work in concert with other types of criminal activities. But critical, bringing all of that back to the point that 99% of all cyber attacks, depending on the study, 95, 97, Our human element impact, this is about social media, email, application behavior, social engineering. This is all about your people and helping them to protect themselves in the organization. I put this up just to let people know. And again, this is something for clients that they typically may not understand or appreciate. You know, healthcare records seem incredibly valuable, but they aren't compared with a corporate email. The corporate email just lends such validation to that next attack through a corporate email. Think of a CEO of a smaller or medium-sized organization. You know, staff don't want to bother the CEO for $100, $200 invoice. If you've got a valid corporate email for that senior executive, and you can send something from that email to an AP clerk and have them process payment for something that isn't valid, multiply that by 10,000 hits across, you know, North America, and you can see how the economics work for the criminal element and the value of that corporate email and validating the attack and creating that credibility. So ignore at your peril. At least 20–25% of companies are being attacked every year successfully. Small businesses are not allocating enough funds to cybersecurity, in particular small businesses that are really just struggling to get back online after shutdowns and lockdowns and you know, client reluctance to engage in services. And then of course, once you've been attacked, it is damaging your brand. It is absolutely causing businesses to go out of business. And we're talking above 50% of businesses going out of business within 6 months of an attack. Problems, of course, we deal with these objections, right? And these challenges in the environment. So we've got global resource shortage. Throughout North America, around the world, there's a massive shortage of cybersecurity trained resources. And it's complicated by the fact that there are increasing micro-credentials. And so trying to determine whether the person you're hiring is qualified or not, very challenging. And then you have the confusion of all of this noise that surrounds cybersecurity. Internal teams or IT providers are saying, don't worry about it, we have it under control. Security consultants are saying, oh my gosh, you need to spend more money. And then the media just sensationalizes every attack. And then, of course, you've got all the usual noise. Throw in COVID-19 and what it's done to the conversation. And you have people who have become easier targets than they were, and an overwhelmed management group who is trying to address a cyber problem in this very difficult environment. Common client objections. So we talk about barriers. These are more barriers we run into, and there are things that we need to get past on the risk management, prevention, and mitigation side in order to help that stop loss cyber product actually work for the client. So first client objection, can't you just install something? Can't you just protect me? And the answer is no. And anyone selling 100% protection is selling snake oil. It's not valid. There are no such things. What you need to do is mitigate across the life cycle. And the NIST cybersecurity framework is a fantastic example of a great life cycle framework. First of all, identify where you've got risk, then protect against attack. Detect when you've been attacked, respond to the attack by shutting it down, and then recover from it. And if you go across that life cycle in advance of any attacks, you will be prepared. And that's the type of risk management that needs to be in place for cyber liability coverage to do its job properly. It's not a huge expense, it's not a huge time effort, but it does require selecting a framework and moving it forward with a client, or having a client move forward with it. Just as an aside, it's interesting that groups like Kaseya and Dato are now finding themselves on the outside looking in. Insurers are simply saying, if you run these solutions in your business, we are not covering you anymore. And that list will grow. Software specific restrictions are not going to end up being effective, but they will exist. And so ensuring your clients are being proactive around their cybersecurity management will help them avoid those pitfalls that might cost them coverage and potentially cost them revenue where they have contractual obligations to maintain coverage. So the second objection from clients, I don't understand all the technobabble around cybersecurity. Simple is better. Don't try to bring your client to the technology table. Help them understand this is about risk. They understand risk. They all are in business dealing with risks and controls. And so talking about it as a business risk rather than as an IT problem is really going to bring that alignment together and help everybody move in the right direction. And finally, I'm too busy. I can't, I don't have the resources to put to looking at cybersecurity. The reality is a proper assessment on a reasonable framework is only a one-day effort. And that's across a few different resources, not just your tech department or your outsourced provider. Just understanding this isn't multiple weeks of effort. This is a few hours to be able to see where your exposure is and then address it so that, again, that cyber liability coverage is able to do its job as the wrapper around the rest of your risk management efforts. So a couple of things around client ROI. 1 in 5 businesses are successfully attacked every year. That's everybody every 5 years. Average cost of an attack, $3.86 million. This is astronomical when you think about it, the average small business. And then of course, the types of costs, detection and escalation, very expensive initial first stage. Lost business, these are things that often are not covered under policies, and notification where you have to go public, have to notify your customers and stakeholders, and then of course, post-response recovery. The cost per file, $146 per file breach. These are stats pulled out of an IBM study that is just, think about the number of files that we all have today, and even things that we store that we do not need in our day-to-day job, but are protected information, confidential information. It's important to know what your file inventory looks like. And cost per industry. And again, leading industries, the reason that I put these up is high-risk industries include at the top end, healthcare, energy, financial services. These are the biggest industries in our economies. They also have a number of small business players, clinics, financial organizations that spring up wealth managers, et cetera. They are being targeted. And so being able to help those industries understand that assessments are critical as a part of their overall risk management strategy, very important. And again, out of that same study, just to help sort of set the stage. Now, we offer an assessment, as do many others out there. So we recommend them so strongly. When you look at this, everything in green is an opportunity to put a control in place in order to reduce the cost of an attack. And in red, it talks about the things that contribute to the expense of a cyber attack. And so we need to develop strategies around those. Frankly, $2.5 million of the $3.8 million overall cost of a claim can be avoided simply by running a NIST CSF-based assessment. We've gone through and mapped controls against all of these, and they would highlight where these gaps are so that you can address them. Okay, there are solutions out there to cut the cost and cut the risk, but your clients need to recognize that whole risk management piece is a part of what they need for proper risk mitigation. So again, we want to set this in the context of the overall business. Businesses operate understanding what financial risk is, the risk of misstatement, the risk of somebody stealing cash from the organization, right? They understand regulatory risk in whatever industry they're in, operational risk, competitor and personnel risk of losing people, of having competitors come in and steal their thunder. Cyber risk is just another part of enterprise risk. And within it, we break it down into controllable risk versus unplanned adverse events. So controllable risk is really where you work your continuous assessment and gap remediation. And then your unplanned adverse events, when you're successfully attacked, because that is likely to happen, that's when you've got that risk transfer. That's when you've got that stop loss through your cyber liability coverage. So again, reminding clients what's important. Well, ready, fire, aim, right? Well, not right. That's the wrong order. And unfortunately, by putting individual tech solutions in, or only putting in a cyber liability policy with none of the proactive measures, you end up with this huge challenge where people are shooting where they see their target. It's important that the client recognizes that they need to see their entire risk environment before they know exactly how to plug in the different solutions. And risk transfer through a cyber liability policy is one of those critical elements. So having set the stage about why this is important and how you want to take the client through that understanding and through that journey, obviously we run an assessment solution, but there are lots out there. And I'd strongly encourage you to make sure that you've got options for your clients so that when they are selecting an assessment, now that they've understood from you how important it is to understand their full environment and make risk management choices that complement their cyber liability coverage. Right? I'm going to walk you through ours as a sample, and then you want to find a tool like that that you can recommend to your clients, irrespective of who puts it out. And it'll depend on the size of your client and what it is that they're looking for in terms of sophistication. So you want to make sure that they're putting awareness in place, that they've got training. Once a year in-person training is not the answer for cybersecurity. The right answer is weekly or monthly training, 5 to 10 minute bits with quizzes and compliance and ensuring compliance at the end, tracking tools like this dashboard that you can see so that you can track your compliance with that education, completing the education, and send it to the insurer. These are the types of things that are being asked for in insurance applications now, right? Confirm that there is an awareness campaign that goes on. Confirm, there are so many other things, backups, they don't use this software, but this awareness piece is so critical. And then run phishing campaigns. And everyone you deal with out there should be running compliance checks in tandem with the education piece. They should be running phishing campaigns. There are many providers out there that do both of these things. We use KnowBe4 and recommend it to anybody. Really ensure that the client's personnel are being phished on a regular basis, and that anytime you see a graph like you see in the middle of this dashboard where clients resources are engaging in risky behavior, right? They can now highlight that for their teams in order to improve the behavior, thereby lowering their risk, lowering the likelihood of a claim. And if there is then an adverse event, the claims end up with a lower quantum, critical for all of us. So when it comes to running an assessment, you want to look for tools out there that are running off of a globally accepted framework. They have to be able to say what it is, or it's just somebody's opinion. So you make sure that your assessment provider is using framework-based assessments. They're flexible enough to incorporate any client-specific or industry-specific compliance requirements, and that they've done some type of mapping against business roles like we've got here that ensures the most efficient deployment of the assessment so that what comes back, it didn't create a lot of pain for the client. You then want to make sure that the reporting that's coming out of it is useful. We've done customized scoring against NIST and other frameworks. Others do off-the-shelf maturity models, but what comes out of it really should stand alone as a report for the client so that they've got actionable items. And you think of the coalitions who are just doing vulnerability scans in order to vet clients on their insurance product. Vulnerability scans externally are great, but we had a client who went through that process with them. It identified an exposed machine instance of their software. Turns out it was on a machine that was no longer a part of anybody's active network in California. The software happened to have been left on it. It wasn't exposing anyone. There was no risk, but because this client had never deleted it off of this unused machine, it came back and bit our client as an exposure. So Coalition declined coverage on that basis. External vulnerability scans are fine. They cannot supplant an assessment. And so running that client through a NIST-based assessment, they were able to answer all of the insurer's questions. And from 17 declinations, they managed to get 3 insurers come to the table with insurance, just because they'd gone through the exercise and then closed some of the gaps that we'd identified. So make sure whatever provider you're using on the assessment side is not only framework-based, but delivers a report that highlights gaps across not just the technology side and the network side, but across the people, policies, and procedures as well, so that the client can action on those items and improve their risk profile. And then finally, you want to be making sure that you are getting a tool that is dynamic. It is one thing to do a one-time cyber assessment, 10, 15, 20, $100,000, whatever it might be. But tracking progress over time, this becomes critical from the insurability point of view. Insurers over the next couple of years, as they become more sophisticated and put more demands in place and forbid certain software, are going to be looking for dynamic underwriting information. That's what this is. So look for someone who's got a dashboard that has and reporting that shows trend over time so that clients can demonstrate that they've run assessments and then remediated gaps and then run new assessments in order to show that improvement over time. Critical for stakeholders. If you've got board members coming on, it's a great benefit to your clients. As a broker, you're a trusted advisor. And so you're approaching this conversation trying to become a partner rather than a supplier. And so focusing on how all of this type of effort is, one, low effort, two, global framework based, assists with insurability, and then three is a risk management solution or tool or opportunity for the client that'll help with their cyber liability and that really incorporates cyber liability in the overall risk management solution. That's driving that conversation. So the client sees you more as that partner rather than simply as a commodity in the marketplace. That's my presentation for today. Thank you very much for listening. Really appreciate it. And if there are any questions, I'm more than happy to handle them. Thank you very much.